If you've ever thought of hiking to Everest Base Camp or are just curious about what the trek to Everest Base Camp is like, then this is the video for you. My name's Claire and I hiked to Everest Base Camp in April 2024, and along the way I put together all of my thoughts and tips and tricks to hopefully help future travellers who are doing the same hike. So without further ado, let's get into my top tips for hiking to Everest Base Camp. Number one is I would really recommend at least considering going with a guide or a trekking company. Now in Nepal, they recently passed a law where you have to go with a guide everywhere other than the Khumbu region, which is where the Everest Base Camp trek is. So if you're in the Khumbu region, you don't need to go with a guide at all. But I just would really recommend it. To be honest, I couldn't imagine going without a guide. So we went with Nepal Hiking Adventure and I was really happy with their service and price. And having a guide basically means that you have someone on hand in case you get altitude sickness, which is very, very common. We're going to go into that a bit later on in the video. And it also just means you have someone, to show you the way, to help if you have any issues, altitude or non-altitude related. And it also helped me understand a bit more about Nepali culture. I had some really great chats with my guide Ram. Yeah, it was just really lovely to make a friend, I guess, almost. I had one night where I really didn't feel very well. I was sick and I felt very nauseous and I had to lie down, and our other guide Raj was so helpful. He brought me up dinner, he explained whether he thought it was altitude sickness or not, he explained the sort of my options if I didn't feel better in the morning. Luckily I did. So having that was invaluable, and if you don't have a guide, you don't really have that safety net. So definitely consider either booking with a company. I can recommend Nepal Hiking Adventure, they were very good, or using guide services when you get to Lukla, which is where you start the trek from. My next tip would be to not necessarily feel like you have to buy all your gear before you get to Nepal, because you can buy pretty much everything in Tamil. So Tamil is a neighbourhood of Kathmandu, it is the tourist neighbourhood, and here you will find stalls selling everything, literally everything you could need, from sleeping bags to hiking poles to like down trousers. You could literally come to Nepal unprepared for the hike and completely stock up in Tamil. A lot of the products here are fake, like North Face or fake Kathmandu, the brand, not the city. So they are knockoffs, but they are good knockoffs. And out of everything that we bought, like the whole group of 12 of us bought in Kathmandu, I don't think we had any issues with anything that we bought there. So you can buy good stuff. If you have very particular things like hiking boots, I'd probably recommend getting elsewhere. Anything that you want specifically, then do get it outside of Kathmandu, but just don't feel like you have to buy everything there. It's also very, very cheap. That's partly why I recommend buying things in Kathmandu. I got a down jacket, 2 like long sleeve tops, a backpack cover, a sleeping bag liner, and I feel like I got something else as well, and it was all about 50 quid for everything, and in the UK it would be double that just for the down jacket. So yeah, definitely recommend holding out to buy some things until you get to Tamil. Okay, so training. If you can, try to head somewhere with altitude for some of your training. Now I know this isn't possible for everyone, and it wasn't possible for me if I'm honest. I live in the UK, we don't really have altitude in the UK. I think our highest peak is, what's our highest peak? It's less than 1,000 meters, isn't it? So yeah, you can't really get to any kind of altitude in this country. However, if you're in the UK like me, if you can get out to the Alps for a bit of hiking, or if you're in the US, if you can get to some of the mountains in the US, I would really recommend it, just because feeling the altitude and feeling how your body copes with the altitude is really invaluable to know before you head out on this hike. If you can, I would recommend doing this altitude training about a month before you go to Nepal, just because then your body's a bit more used to being at altitude and it will accustom a lot quicker if you do that. There were 2 people in our trekking group who had been out in Peru and they seemed to deal with the altitude really, really well, whereas I know I was struggling having come straight from sea level. So I think it's a really good idea to try and, if you can, implement some altitude training, even if it's just a couple of days, it might be a good thing to do. And the other thing that you should do for training, and this should come as no surprise really, is practice going up hills. So, you're going from 2,600 meters to 5,000 5,400 meters, I think it is. There's obviously going to be a lot of hills. There is a lot of downhill as well. There's not that much flat, but there is. It's called the Nepali flat. It goes up and down, up and down. But obviously the majority when you're going up is uphill. So do practice those hills, do strengthen those legs. That's probably the best thing that you can do. Even if you, rather than go on a hike, if you just find a hill and walk up and down it for a couple of hours, that's probably better than going on a flat hike. So my next tip would be to obviously take anything you need out to Nepal, but then leave a lot of it in Kathmandu. So don't take anything that you don't need for the trek with you on the trek. You can only take 15 kilograms of luggage on the flight. That includes both your holdall and your day pack, so all of that together needs to weigh 15 kilograms or less, and the porters can only carry 30 kilograms, but that's for 2 people, so again 15 kilograms. And it's just nice to do to make sure that the porters have as little to carry as possible. So anything that you don't need, and be really strict with it, don't take it with you. It'll just be a nuisance. And yeah, obviously the porters have a really hard job as it is. They're literally carrying 30 kilograms up a mountain. They are superhuman, honestly, but it's nice to make their job as easy as possible. We left a lot of our stuff in the Kailash Kuti hotel, which is where we stayed when we arrived in Nepal and when we got back from the hike as well. I had my laptop with me, a few of us did, and we gave that to the owner of Nepal Hiking Adventures to store at the office, and it was all fine. I was quite nervous about leaving my laptop because I don't like leaving it anywhere, but it was all fine. So try and arrange something like that so you can leave your stuff in Kathmandu rather than taking everything with you. My next tip for being on the hiking trail is to not eat meat. So I'm vegetarian anyway, so this didn't affect me at all, but it's highly recommended that you don't eat meat. You'll see it when you're on the trail. Everything is carried up in open baskets, so that includes meat and everything else. Like, you'll see people carrying the largest loads, again, absolutely incredible people, and they will literally carry everything up the mountain, or sometimes they use donkeys or ox or yaks as well. So yeah, the meat is just carried up, it's not refrigerated, and it's just in open baskets, so it can go off very quickly. Local people do eat the meat. My guide was saying that they do, and generally they find it fine, although sometimes they do get kind of bad stomachs with it as well, but they strongly advise no tourists eat it. So if you want to avoid tummy trouble, you may still get tummy trouble even if you don't eat meat. I definitely did. But if you want to avoid that, then just avoid the meat completely. And another food-wise point is to pack lots of chocolate bars or little snacks that you know you'll like, and try and get them before you actually get on the trail, and bring more than you think you need. I bought some chocolate in Kathmandu. I forgot to buy it before I came to Nepal, but bought some in Kathmandu and went through it quite quickly, then ended up having to buy it on the trail. Basically, when you get onto the Everest Base Camp hiking trail, everything gets more expensive the higher you go up, so it's a really good idea to buy it when you're lower down. You just save a lot of money that way. I thought I'd be okay with the food on the trail. I knew that it was very vegetarian friendly, and I don't mind often eating like the same thing over and over again. But after I got sick, I was really put off. I was really scared of eating from some of the menus because I didn't really know what made me sick, and I was scared of getting sick again. So actually having some chocolate to eat really saved me, and it really topped up my energy levels. We also brought out some naked bars, the fruit and nut bars that you have in the UK, and they were good. They were a bit dry. This is another thing, everything's very dry when you're there, so they did become quite difficult to eat at times. But one of our friends had Pringles, Haribo, and all things like that. Like, it just seems like when you've been hiking for ages and you've been out of sort of eating your normal food for ages, having something like that is just the best thing ever. So I definitely recommend treating yourself with your snacks. You're hiking all day, you deserve them. And yeah, just bringing a few more than you think you need, because trust me, you will need them. And also don't forget toilet paper. So nowhere has toilet paper. Nowhere has toilet paper, soap or towels. So you need your own, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, ideally, and a travel towel. You can buy toilet paper on the trail, you can buy it anywhere on the trail, but again, it gets more and more expensive. So down in Lukla, which is where the trail starts, we were paying, I think we got toilet paper for 100 a roll there, which is just under $1, but up in Gorak Shep, I saw that it was being sold for 500 rupees a roll. and that is about $4 for one roll of toilet paper. So stock up on your loo roll. Again, either bring it from your country or you can buy it in Kathmandu, I'm sure, although I don't think any of us did. If you haven't got it from either of those places, then buy it further down, buy it before Namche Bazaar, and try and make it last, because otherwise you can end up spending an absolute fortune on toilet roll. Another thing I would recommend bringing is Diamox. So this is a bit, not controversial, but some people don't want to take it, some people do take it. Personally, I did take it. I started taking it when I felt unwell, and it did make me feel better. I think about four people in our group took it out of 11, and it just helps with altitude sickness. There are a few side effects. It can make you pee a lot, and you need to drink a lot of water to avoid getting kidney problems, and some people who take certain medications or have certain health conditions can't have it. So I would recommend speaking to a pharmacist before you go. If you're in the UK, I use the Boots online pharmacy service, and basically filled out a form and was prescribed it online, and then I went to pick it up. That was all fine. You can also buy it in Kathmandu, but obviously just be aware that you just buy it over the counter there. They might not ask you any questions about your health history, so it might be a good idea to get the all clear from a pharmacist or doctor beforehand. I would recommend having it with you, just in case. This is just because if you start feeling altitude sickness, if you've got it with you, you can take it and you get some effects quite quickly, like you start feeling better quite quickly. If you start feeling altitude sickness and it doesn't get better, then you have to go down. So I would recommend having it just in case, but obviously whether you want to take it or not, that is a personal decision. All right, so a funner tip now, just make sure you stop and see some sights along the way. So Everest Base Camp is mostly about the hiking, but it is not all about the hiking. So there are quite a few things to see along the way, and this really breaks up the hiking day, so it's quite pleasant really. So some of the things that I would recommend seeing or going to include the Sagarmatha National Park Museum. So Sagarmatha is the Nepali name for Everest, and there's an excellent museum which is all about the mountain, the Sherpa community, attempts to summit Everest and successful summitings of Everest, about the flora and fauna. It's a really good museum. It's very small, but it's like a little TARDIS. There's loads of information there, so definitely head there. And also from outside there you can actually see Everest. This was the first time we actually saw the mountain. There's also the Everest View Hotel, which is also near Namche Bazaar. The Everest View Hotel, as the name suggests, you can see Everest from there, although by the time we got there it had clouded over, so we couldn't see it. We stopped there for a tea. The tea was probably the worst we'd had, and also the most expensive we'd had. We had to like make it ourselves. Like we just got hot water with lemon in, and then we got given honey and ginger, and we had to kind of put it all together. So yeah, maybe I wouldn't recommend going there for a tea, but it is a nice view at least. So if you're on a tour, you'll probably see those parts as part of your acclimatization day trek in Namche. I'll talk about acclimatization days in a moment. Other things that you might see along the way include Tengbush Monastery, which is really, really beautiful. It's a monastery surrounded by mountains, very peaceful place, and you can go in there. I think it's about 300 rupees to go in. You can go in there, have a little look around the monastery, and we got a blessing from a monk as well, which was really lovely. If you're in Namche Bazaar or Dingbush, there's a few like bakeries to go to where you can just have a cake and chill out. We had a great afternoon in Dingbush. This was on another acclimatization day, and we pretty much just sat there eating cake, drinking hot drinks, and we also watched the Everest movie, which is on Amazon Prime, I believe. Yeah, it was just really lovely, so definitely factor in some time to like rest in a bakery. You'll need it. A little bit more somber, but there's also the Climbers Memorial, and this focuses on, well, it's memorials to people who have sadly lost their lives summiting Everest or other mountains, all people who have been climbing past base camp, so don't worry, base camp is very largely safe, but yeah, summiting Everest can be quite dangerous. You might find memorials to people that you've heard of, people like Rob Hall and Scott Fisher who feature in the Everest movie. But yeah, it was quite poignant, and it's a very beautiful memorial. It's a very appropriate place. Like when we were hiking, because we saw it there and we saw it going back, when we were hiking back it was clear and we could see all the mountains, all the clouds, and then the memorial, it looked like heaven. Like it was really, yeah, it was quite moving. So definitely take some time to take all of that in. And then just past the Climbers Memorial, there is the Everest Base Camp. And this is a lot smaller than Everest Base Camp, but it is the first base camp that you'll see. And it's quite cool just to take a look at. We didn't go into it or anything, but we just had a little look from the distance. So let's talk about acclimatization days quickly as well. So if you're doing a tour, then these will be built in and you don't need to worry about them. But if you are hiking independently, acclimatization days are very, very important. So usually people do 2 acclimatization days, one at Namche Bazaar, which is 3,400 meters, and one at Dingbush, which I think is 4,400 meters. And it's basically, you stay in the place for 2 nights, and on the full day you've got there, you climb up a bit and then you climb down, and this helps with altitude sickness. So on our day in Namche Bazaar, we climbed up to the Sagarmatha National Park Museum, which is about 150 meters above Namche. Then we climbed up to the Everest View Hotel, which is about 400 meters above Namche. Then we stayed there for a little bit and then we came back down, and that helped our body adjust to the higher altitudes. And we did the same in Dingbush. We pretty much just climbed upwards. I think we did about 250 meters on that day and then just climbed back down. So as I said, these will be factored into your itinerary if you do a tour. If they're not, then you need to probably change providers, because they definitely should be factored into your tour because it's a safety thing. But if you're doing it independently, do make sure you do that as well. All right, so my next tip would be to fuel your body as much as possible at low altitudes. So as I mentioned, the food is okay. I was fine with it at the start, and then when I was sick, I did start feeling a little bit put off it, I guess. At lower altitudes, you'll find the food just tastes quite a bit fresher, there's a bit more variety, and you'll just feel like eating more. So eat as much as you can when you're at these lower altitudes, because when you get a bit higher, you might find you do lose your appetite and it becomes a bit more sparse on the menu, because obviously they have to carry everything up, so you do get less ingredients and less fresh ingredients. So yeah, just try and make sure you're extra fueled when you're lower, and then when you're a bit higher, hopefully, if you don't eat quite as much, it will impact you less. All right, this is probably my most important tip, so write this down. Make sure you have more than adequate insurance. So most insurance policies don't cover you for trekking above 4,000 meters, and they also don't cover for helicopter evacuations. My guide told me that in 40% of groups, 1 or more people are heli evacuated. So there's not 40% of people, but in 40% of groups it happens to maybe 1 person. However, these are still quite high odds of the risk of being heli evacuated, and you don't want to be caught uninsured for heli evacuation because it is expensive. It's a few $1,000s, pounds. Plus, you don't want something to happen to you above 4,000 meters and your insurers to say, well, you were tracking above 4,000 meters, we don't cover that. So make sure that your travel insurance covers those 2 things. We did a lot of research, and it took us quite a while to find one that covered everything. So we went with True Traveller in the end, who are specialised in that kind of insurance, and you actually have an option to tick for hiking in Nepal, and they cover heli evac, trekking to 5,500 meters, I believe it is, or maybe it's 6,000. Double check when you book it, but around that. So which is fine for Everest Base Camp. And they also cover everything else that you expect in normal insurance as well. So I would recommend going with them. It is quite expensive. It cost me about £200. I did actually use the insurance, but not when I was hiking, when I was back in Kathmandu. Story for another day. I do have a video on it if you want to check out my I did not expect this to happen after Everest Base Camp video. I'll put it up here. I ended up with hives all over my body basically, which we think was probably a stress reaction after the hike, and I had to go to hospital. I was put on an IV, and my treatment cost about £350, which I got £250 back from True Traveller. So I can vouch for them. The claims process was very easy. While I didn't need them for heli evac or anything actually on the trail, I do know they cover that as well. So I do recommend them. Some of my friends went for Austrian Mountain Rescue, something like that, which one member of our group actually did get heli evac and I believe did claim on this insurance. So that could be another one to look into, but I obviously don't personally have any connection with them, so I can't personally vouch for them. But if you did want to go for True Traveller insurance, I'll put the link in my bio. This is an affiliate link, so if you do make a booking through them, I get a small commission at no extra cost to you. That's just one of the ways that I can help keep this channel running. My next tip for what to bring, and I do have a full packing list video, so do check that out as well if you want a real detailed account of absolutely everything I brought. But my next, I guess, recommendation that's something that you absolutely need is a water to go bottle. So I took my water to go bottle, I think it's over here actually. Yeah, I had this, my water to go bottle, and I, basically what I did, I had 2 plastic bottles and I filled them up from the tap every morning, and then I filled from that, I decanted into here, and then this has a filter in, so when I drank that it was clean drinking water. And that was a really good way to save money throughout the trail, because you can't drink the tap water. I think locals do drink the tap water there, but they don't recommend tourists drink it. It just gives you clean drinking water. The only place I was recommended to not use it, although I do think it would have been fine, because you know, you can literally fill this out of a muddy puddle and get clean drinking water, but I was recommended to not use it in Gorak Shep because the water can be very dusty there because they get it out of a well. Like I say, I think it would have been fine, but the guides did mention it a couple of times to us, so I thought I'll just err on the side of caution and buy bottled water there. It was very expensive there. It was 500 rupees a bottle, so about $4 per litre of drinking water. But everywhere else, I literally just filled this up and drank for free. My next tip would be to bring a set of non-hiking clothes. So I did this and it was heaven. So basically, when you arrive at the tea houses, you're going to be a bit sweaty, you're going to be a bit smelly. You can't shower past Namche Bazaar. Well, you can, but it's not recommended that you do. So what I would do is I had a pack of wet wipes, I did a wet wipe clean, and then I actually put these on, these tracksuit bottoms, and actually put my whole outfit here. This jumper, and then I had a t-shirt that I never hiked in, and I also had these down slippers which looked like giant sleeping bags for my feet. They were the best things ever. And I also had socks that I didn't hike in. So I felt like I was putting, you know, a clean outfit on, even though it wasn't clean by the time we'd done 12 days of the hike, but it wasn't hiked in, so it was less disgusting than the rest of my clothes. And it just helped me relax a bit more, feel more comfortable. And then it's nice to kind of have a break from your hiking clothes. So definitely bring a set of clothes, put them into a separate bag, and just don't hike in them. Don't touch them for hiking. All right, my penultimate tip would be to know the first signs of altitude sickness and act accordingly if you get ill. So I am not a medical professional, and please don't just go by what I'm gonna say, but the first signs of altitude sickness are usually a headache, dizziness, and nausea or vomiting. But it can manifest in other ways. I think it can cause diarrhea, and it can cause a few other symptoms as well. I did have a headache a lot of the time on the base camp trail, but it was quite a normal headache for me. So I made my own executive decision that I thought it was just a exertion headache. If I'd had any worsening headache or any headache sort of around the back of my head, and if I'd had dizziness, I would have been more concerned. I also did vomit once on the trail, and I did have that night where I felt very sick, and myself and my guide weren't sure if it was altitude sickness. It could have been. Because I was sick once and then I felt a lot better, and because I felt better by the morning, I made the decision that I was okay to carry on. But you've got to know the symptoms, so read the NHS website if you're in the UK. I mean, you can read it anywhere, or read your local health website and check what the symptoms are, know what to look for, and if you feel those symptoms, and if you feel worse symptoms such as hallucinating, vomiting blood, what else, coughing up blood as well, and any kind of mental disorientation or anything, then act quickly. You can speak to your guide will know a lot about altitude sickness. They do this a lot, they work with tourists a lot. If you don't have a guide, you can speak to people in the tea houses who will also be able to help you. Everest Base Camp is very safe. I think on average 3 to 5 people per year die on the trail. Tragically, someone did actually die while we were there, which is very, very sad, and it was due to altitude sickness. But they do say that most of these deaths, or nearly all of these deaths, are preventable, because altitude sickness, while it is awful and that can be very dangerous, if you catch it early enough and then go to a lower altitude, then it does go away. Just read up on it, know the signs, and know what to do if you get unwell, because only you know how you're feeling. So a more cheerful tip to round this video off, and that is just go slow, take it all in, and just enjoy it. I did find Everest Base Camp quite difficult, I'm not gonna lie, but I also absolutely loved it. It was so beautiful, the scenery was incredible, Nepali culture is wonderful, the people are so lovely, and that is amplified in the mountains, and it's just such an achievement, you know, getting to 5,000, I can't remember how high Everest Base Camp is. Everest Base Camp height. 5,364 meters. That is pretty high. Getting to the place where people literally leave to climb the highest mountain in the world, like, it is fascinating. And seeing the highest mountain in the world as well, like, nothing compares to that. So while there is quite a few things to consider, I'm so glad that I've done it. I would not do it again. It's one of the things that you do once and that's it. But I had such a good time, illnesses and everything, and looking back on it, it was just such a really good experience. But I would really recommend just taking it slow and making sure you really take the time to absorb it all, take it all in, and you will have the best time. So I think that is everything for this video. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. And if I get enough questions, I might do another like Q&A or something. Happy to talk about anything to do with base camp or Nepal or travel in general. You can ask me whatever, I'm an open book. I'm gonna be uploading my Kathmandu video next week. And then I'm also gonna do a kind of Nepal travel guide, which is gonna talk about things like visas, how to get to Nepal, and general things you need to know about Nepal, like language, money, that sort of thing. So if you're hiking to Everest Base Camp, planning to hike to Everest Base Camp, that video will help you out as well. But it's also suitable for anyone who is going to Nepal and not hiking to Everest Base Camp. It's just gonna be kind of, yeah, general Nepal travel tips. So do follow along if you're interested in seeing that. I've got lots more videos as well. Bahrain, and then I'm doing a lot of overland challenges over this summer, which is my favourite thing to do. So I hope you stay tuned for that, and I hope I'll see you in some of my videos soon. Please do drop me a comment and introduce yourself and let me know if you want to hike Everest Base Camp, if you've hiked Everest Base Camp, if you've been to Nepal. I'd absolutely love to chat in the comment section.